This is Heather Wokusch, and thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to talk about a very important topic that unfortunately is somewhat under the radar, and that is fracking. Now, as energy sources become harder to find and the hunt for natural gas becomes even more intense, public health, and environmental implications can suffer. And so we are joined today by New York's clean water advocate, which is Riverkeeper. We are delighted to be joined by two representatives. One is the staff attorney, Mike Dulong, and the second is the Vice President for Development, Keeva Young-Wright. And we are going to learn more about fracking and also some of the other projects that Riverkeeper is working on. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate that very, very much. So can I ask you a little bit about, can you tell us about Riverkeeper? Can you tell us about Riverkeeper, Keeva?
Sure. So Riverkeeper, very simply, is the voice of the river. So we are the river's lawyer, Mike, PR agent, the river scientist, and chief advocate, and also for the watershed, which is where New York City and some parts of the Hudson Valley get their drinking water from. So very important that the watershed has a voice and a lawyer and a PR agent and a scientist and the Hudson River.
Okay, and how did you get involved with Riverkeeper?
Well, I got really lucky. So I worked for our president, Paul Gallet, at a former organization. Okay. And when he became the president of Riverkeeper a little bit over 2 years ago, he invited me in to meet the staff, and I was smitten. We are, you'll see in Mike and the others on our team, just some of the most dedicated, hardworking, brilliant people working on behalf of this important resource. So it was, I just consider myself really lucky.
And how did you get involved with Riverkeeper?
Well, when you study the history of environmental law, Riverkeeper comes up again and again as one of the pioneers of using legal tools to solve environmental problems. So as soon as I graduated law school, I took a fellowship and applied to Riverkeeper, and it's really a dream come true to be able to use those skills that I've built up in school and fight for the Hudson River and for New York City drinking water, and to work with dedicated people. And we have a very small crew, and everyone works very hard to protect the environment in New York.
Let's then get into fracking. What is fracking?
Sure. Fracking is a process of shale gas extraction where gas companies will drill down about a mile to a geologic formation called shale, which is basically a petrified champagne. The bubbles in the champagne would be the gas that you're trying to extract. It's called methane. It's the blue gas that you would burn on your stove. So to get the gas out of that rock, they drill horizontally about a mile or two, and they blast that rock with about 8 million gallons of a mixture of water, sand, and 600 chemicals. And among those chemicals are very toxic chemicals like formaldehyde and arsenic and benzene and toluene. What those chemicals do is they'll blast the rock and they'll hold it open so that the natural gas can flow out and back up to the surface. But when we talk about the process of fracking, we have to talk about the whole process, soup to nuts. We have to talk about the 4,000 heavy truck trips it takes to get the equipment and the water and the sand to the well site. And we have to talk about the air impacts that it has during the fracking process to release smog-forming chemicals that cause asthma. And we have to talk about the wastewater disposal. Some of that 8 million gallons that you pump underground will come back up. And there's no good way to dispose of it, and it's full of those toxic chemicals still.
And 600 chemicals just does not sound like a good thing to be pumping into our potential water system.
Especially when you don't know what they are. That's the scary part.
Yeah, I mean, that's horrifying. Now, I understand that the governor recently ordered the state to update an environmental review of the gas drilling impacts. So can you give us some information about that?
Right. Well, the governor is about to decide whether to allow fracking in the state, high-volume hydraulic fracturing in the state. And in order to do so, the environmental agency in the state, the Department of Environmental Conservation, has to complete a document studying every single environmental impact that fracking could possibly have here. They are in the process of doing that, and they have released drafts online. They're on their website. You can go to DEC and check them out. And Riverkeeper has reviewed them, and we have seen that the drafts are woefully inadequate. There's no in-depth study of human health impacts. There's
There's no in-depth study of human health impacts?
None whatsoever.
I would think that would tend to be a rather important point.
We agree.
Right.
Yeah. We agree.
It also ignores what we're going to do with wastewater. There's no plan to deal with those millions of gallons of wastewater that are going to. It does. The government has been working for 4 years on this document, so it does cover a lot, and it will go into impacts to the air and impacts to the water.
Okay. But still, that's a very, very critical document and the study that comes out. Now, I would say that one problem is that many of us just don't have your legal mind, and we also are not technical people. And so I think for many people, they're just kind of hoping that it gets better and it goes away and it's not going to be a problem. So have you had any experiences trying to explain what this is?
Absolutely, and that's where Riverkeeper comes in, because I don't have Mike's legal mind or a staff scientist, and so that's where we fill a really important gap, Heather, because these impact statements, they're pages long, and language that most of us never come across in our everyday lives. And so what I tell people is, start dialogues in your community. Most of us are members of places of worship, and you can invite people. Riverkeeper, we've been asked by churches, by schools, everywhere from grade schools to colleges, to come in and have conversations. Ask questions like, what will my community really look like after fracking takes over? Because the industry shows pretty pictures of happy people, but those big rigs aren't beautiful, and the idea of having your agricultural area completely changed overnight into an industrial wasteland. People get that. That's not technical language. People understand that. People understand what it's like when your water, delicious New York City water for our bagels and our pizza, is no longer usable. That's accessible. And so I think, for people to understand it at that very basic level, if you're a mother, you don't want to think of your child being ill from chemicals that you don't even know what those chemicals are, so you can't go to the doctor and say, I think my kid got infected with what? That's the big secret, right? We've seen it in Pennsylvania, we've seen it in other places, and New York's really lucky because we have the opportunity, unfortunately, to learn from others' mistakes. And so we know what it's like to see a sick child. That's very accessible.
The interesting thing for me is that we don't see enough of this reported in the media here, And so, actually, I live in Europe right now, and you see reports on fracking all the time, but fracking is not there. It possibly could be coming, but people are talking about it. However, here, the media does tend to shy away from it a bit. Why would you say that is the case? What are your theories on that?
One theory is the media is funded by natural gas companies now. I'm sure if you listen to the radio or watch TV, you see natural gas commercials all the time, and the Exxons of the world are telling you how wonderful this is and how we're pursuing safe, clean energy. But they leave out the part that they're destroying communities and that they're leaving people's groundwater, their well water that they drink, contaminated.
I also think, it's the old David and Goliath story. We cannot afford to compete with those advertising dollars. And so thanks to platforms like this, we have the opportunity to share. We're also very active in social media. So we at Riverkeeper, we have a website that's built, a community that's built specifically for fracking. In addition to our Riverkeeper website, we're very active on Twitter.
And the URL for that one?
Don't frack the
I love that title.
Really easy. So those are the ways that we try to get the information out. But you're absolutely right. It's no competition. The advertising dollars are just unmatched, and we can't compete.
We really do have to hit the ground and talk to people one-on-one and get in their faces and then communicate with them.
So let's say that I'm a person that...
And you are.
Yes, I am. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So let's say the person, I've got no idea about this, and somehow you need to make me think that this is an issue that I should take seriously. And I said, I'm busy. I don't have time. They'll take care of it. The government will handle it. What kind of arguments are you going to give me?
It's not an easy thing. And when I talk to some of my friends about this, they just say, I'm already asleep. And so leave me alone. But you really have to relate it to how it will affect, say New Yorkers, and it will affect everybody in the state. And so when you talk to a New York City resident, you have to talk about their drinking water. The pride of New York is how clean and fresh our unfiltered drinking water is. And fracking presents perhaps the single greatest danger to our water. It could pollute the underground, the groundwater, and it can also have an impact by clearing the land. And if you clear the land, you're going to get rid of those natural filtration systems that make our water so clean. And
I tell them it's going to cost them more. Because I tell them if something happens and our system of unfiltered drinking water is compromised, and it's quite possible that it could be, probable really, and the EPA decides to tell New York State, you are going to have a filtered water system, we're talking about billions of dollars, a price tag that we can't even begin to fathom in an environment where we're already economically stressed. And so I tell them, well, are we willing to take that risk? Who wants to pay more taxes for filtered water? Or do we just want to leave that alone and concentrate on schools and get, music back in the classroom and gym? I'd much rather have that than have to go fix a problem that wasn't broken. I mean, that we have that going for us. It's like, would you mess with the Statue of Liberty? And that kind of brings it home, like, we're doing okay.
And there's also the issue, too, that you referred to before about the body burden. I mean, this, cocktail of chemicals that would go inside the body, what are the untold consequences of that? And if I get sick, and if I have some immune system disorder or whatever, and I go to the doctor, will they even know what's wrong with me if it's some strange combination? And so that's a whole other area, not only of pain and suffering, but also of, medical expenses and all of that. Let's say that now I'm actively engaged, and I know that I must do something. On the riverkeeper.org website, and also Don't Frack with New York, I just love that. Do you have action tips? And can you tell us some of the things that people can actually do?
We do. We have informational events all the time in the city. We show, sometimes we show Gasland the movie, which is a great documentary if you are new to the topic and you want to see what kind of impacts fracking can really have. And other things that we do are very action-oriented and political-oriented. So we will talk to our local councilmen and the governor and our state representatives, and we'll have a message where you can just go online and find the governor's phone number and call his office and tell him what you're thinking, tell him what you're concerned about.
Do you have, for example, like a mailing list that I can go on and then you'll tell me what to do, or do I have to go and check your site?
No, we'll email you. We'll email you all the time.
And one of the things that we should say is that Riverkeeper is a membership organization. And our president has this funny joke that he gives when he's out talking to people where he says, the great thing about being a member at Riverkeeper is you get to tell me what to do. And so we're owned by the community. We have almost, 5,000 members. Membership starts at only $1. And once you become a member of Riverkeeper, first of all, I think it's a point of pride. How can you not? And then you're armed with all this information. And we really do make it easy to access the process because I never want people to feel that if they don't have a law degree, if they don't have a science degree, if they don't have, a background in environmental justice, they can't get involved. That's absolutely not the truth.
And a lot of times they don't have time, but if, there's one little thing that I can do, like send
Sometimes
an email.
It's a click. Sometimes it's just a click.
Perfect. Now, one thing that people might want to be getting, involved in right now is we have this Spectra pipeline that might possibly be coming in. And so can you give us just a little tiny bit of background on that?
Sure. There is a project that's going to go underneath the Hudson, I believe from Bayonne, but it's going to go right to the West Side Highway, right to that park on the west side in the West Village. are other groups working on that. The Sane Energy Project, Riverkeeper is not directly involved in that, but that project will bring fracked gas to New York City.
And I understand that Mayor Bloomberg is actually quite supportive of fracking. Do you have, for example, on your website, things that people can do to contact him with their opinion about that? Or,
Well, the Mayor Bloomberg gave $6 million to study how fracking can be done safely. That's an interesting position to take because he skips over the question, can fracking ever be done safely? And what he thinks is, he wants to cut out the watershed so that it's not done in New York City's water, but he thinks it can be done safely elsewhere. And I think if he's not willing to do it in our watershed, he shouldn't be willing to do it outside. We don't currently have an action alert because we would like to see the more science we get on fracking is a good thing.
So it's a developing story. I mean, we certainly can say. Now, you have a 9-year-old child.
I do.
So when you look at this issue, what are your thoughts regarding protecting your child?
My thoughts as a mother is that this space that we inhabit is borrowed. We can't, this attitude that you sort of take all you can get from the environment now because we need it now just doesn't sit well when you have the future staring at you at home. And so whether it's fracking or, irresponsible development, I want us to take our time to get it right because I owe my child that, and children nowadays, they're great. They want to educate you on being a good environmental steward. I mean, they want to make sure that you're recycling, that you understand global warming. I mean, for kids today, it's not a question. They know. So they really sort of, I think, hold us to a higher standard. And what Mayor Bloomberg is doing, I think, the mayor, I believe he's an engineer by background, so I understand he believes that things can be done. And I love American innovation, but I also know that we have to respect our environment and we have to understand when we're just not getting it right. And so I think it's really important to take our time and not do irreversible damage that we have to explain to our kids because they're going to want to know. I mean, they already have good questions at 9 and they're going to hold us accountable.
Riverkeeper is involved in many, many different issues. Can you give us a little bit of background about other topics that Riverkeeper is involved in?
Sure. We're doing a lot, all up and down the Hudson River, all in the watershed. A couple of things in New York City. We're working on Newtown Creek and Gowanus Canal. We have a boat that sails up and down the river, and our captain, John Lipscomb, took a turn into Newtown Creek 10 years ago and saw pollution everywhere. And we have been fighting to clean up every property along Newtown Creek and pushing the United States to make it a Superfund site, to clean up all the pollution that's been there.
What kind of pollution? Industrial pollution?
Industrial pollution. We have, there's an oil refinery that's there. People may not know there's an oil leak that's actually underneath Greenpoint right now. It's coming out of Brooklyn and coming into Newtown Creek.
And how long has that been going on?
That has been going on for a long time. Decades.
Is that water that people swim in or they eat fish out of or anything like that?
People do fish all along those waters, all in the East River.
One would think that would be important information to let people know.
Right. And we are certainly getting that information out. But
my goodness.
It is getting a lot cleaner, surprisingly. We have boating groups now, and we have the Newtown Creek Alliance that has joined us as a partner, and we are cleaning it up.
Okay. What other kinds of things is Riverkeeper involved in?
Well, I just wanted to add something to what Mike said about, what we're doing. We're also getting the community to own this and really, take ownership of their local waterways because they're the ones who can make that noise and tell their local electeds this is not acceptable. People forget there's this little law, but really important, called the Clean Water Act, which is really sort of the background of everything we do at Riverkeeper. And while the Clean Water Act is 40 years old, we're still not there in terms of what's promised. And I won't try to quote the law because that's what Mike is here for, but it basically says that our waters should be swimmable, fishable, drinkable. And when you look at Newtown Creek or you look at the Gowanus Canal or even the Hudson River at any given time, we haven't delivered on that promise. And so Riverkeeper, you know, whether it's, you asked about other things we get involved in, we are currently partnering with the state to stop the relicensing of Indian Point. Which is the nuclear plant in Buchanan, New York. We are currently opposing the governor's current plan to replace the Tappan Zee Bridge because the plan that he has on the table, we believe the in-river impacts are just unacceptable. So
unacceptable from a pollution standpoint, or
from impacts on fish. The Hudson River is home to endangered species, which is really important to know, and how we address that and take care of that issue is a matter of law.
Exactly.
So you know, the Clean Water Act really sort of gives us our marching orders, and just like people wouldn't sit back and let the gains from the civil rights be eaten away, we feel that way about the Clean Water Act. And while we still have a long way to go, there's at least a standard that we're 40 years late.
I think one of the problems with these acts is there's always loopholes. Like, isn't there the Halliburton loophole somehow with fracking?
There is the Halliburton loophole in the Energy Policy Act, I believe, of 2005. That was under Bush-Cheney. They pushed through a bunch of loopholes. So a loophole from the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Air Act, things that are supposed to protect us, and allowed fracking to go free without worrying about those things. So they're allowed to inject toxic chemicals without oversight from the government. And they're allowed to give off volatile organic compounds which cause smog and asthma without the same requirements that other similar industries have.
So as a lawyer, what would you say would be the possibility of getting that loophole closed? What would that take?
It would take an act of Congress, and Congress is totally stalled right now, and they're not moving anything along, especially environmental protection. So it would take a lot. It would take a fundamental shift in our culture, really, and in our political landscape.
And actually, we were discussing earlier that during the conventions that just took place, there were actually rather a large number of natural gas ads, and so so one could suggest that possibly Congress is not going to be highly, motivated to be pushing this topic anyway, even though this is something that would protect the public. And so I guess what we're saying is the media, to a certain extent, is complicit. The government possibly is not as active as it could be. And so it comes down to organizations such as Riverkeeper to just reach the heart and the soul and the minds of the public.
I think it's very important to protect your community and to look at the environment in your community and see what needs to change. And then come to Riverkeeper with those problems. Come to your Congress people. Come to your electeds.
How about you? What would you say?
In honor of my son, I'm going to quote the Lorax, right? It's one of my favorite books. Which basically says, it says it all right there. Unless you and I care an awful lot, nothing's going to change. It's not. And I think that's really what it comes down to, whether you're interested in advocating for education, for the environment, for health, for women's rights, whatever it is you care about. Riverkeeper can only do what the public empowers us to do, in addition to the law. So we need people to get informed, get interested, get educated. It feels good to play a role. That's what America's all about. You get to play a role. You get to have a say. Fracking won't happen to you. You have a voice, and we're here to fight with you. So,
well, that's a very, very important message, that you do have the power to do something. You don't have to just sit back and take this.
We just saw that there was an 11-year-old boy who just did...
Jimmy.
Jimmy just did, a lemonade stand and raised $2,700 for the cause.
Jimmy, where does Jimmy live?
Pound Ridge. Pound Ridge.
Really?
And and he's been a Riverkeeper member and a supporter for a couple of years. It all started with a school project, and he came in to interview our president, Paul, and he just decided that he was inspired and he felt empowered to do something. And we tell everybody, you do what you can. Everybody has the ability to do something. And the other thing, too, is we just got a law passed, actually, which is unheard of in this political landscape, the Sewage Right to Know law, which now...
Sewage Right to Know.
So it's actually Sewage Pollution Right to Know Act. And essentially what it is, don't laugh now, Heather, because it's a serious business. But
the joke's in my head.
Right. Well, we're gonna talk about poop because sewage enters the Hudson River and places where people boat and swim and have fun and kayak, and they don't know.
Talk about intestinal diseases.
Right. Gross. So what this law essentially does, it's pretty serious business. It makes it so that municipalities have to notify people. You know, whether it's through the website or through phone banks. I don't think they've figured out exactly how the notification is going to take place, but just the fact that it's a law that people need to be notified that the water is not appropriate for recreation is important, and that just got passed, I would say, about 2 months ago, which, you know, again, in this landscape, for anything to happen.
I mean, it seems like such a basic thing, but it's such a victory.
And it's a big deal.
I think Jimmy should have his lemonade and then fracked water. You know, what do you guys want? So listen, I can't thank you both enough for joining us. So Mike Dulong, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
for having us. Thank you.
And we highly, highly encourage you to go to the riverkeeper.org website, sign up, become a member. Again, it doesn't cost much at all, and it's a very, very important cause. Water is just so basic. I mean, if you don't have water, that's it. And also check out the Don't Frack with New York site. And just remember from the Lorax that you can make a difference. And this is no time to be complacent. So thank you so much for joining us.